Pre-Suasion by Robert B. Cialdini. Pre-Suasion by Robert Cialdini isn't just a book about persuasion, it's an examination of what happens before you attempt to persuade someone. You don't merely deliver the right message, you prepare the recipient to be receptive to that message. The key insight is that influence isn't confined to what you say or how you say it. It's also deeply affected by what happens before the communication even begins. Cialdini uncovers how timing, context, and subtle cues prime people's attention and emotions to create a fertile ground for persuasion. He builds upon his earlier work in influence, but this time the focus shifts from techniques of persuasion to the strategic preparation required to make those techniques effective. He emphasizes the importance of attention, explaining that whatever you direct someone's focus toward will become disproportionately significant in their decision-making process. From the influence of environmental cues to the psychology of associations, Pre-Suasion illustrates how preparatory moments determine whether your message will land effectively or fall flat. Drawing on scientific research, real-world case studies, and marketing examples, Cialdini crafts a roadmap for anyone looking to improve their ability to influence others, ethically and effectively. Lesson 1. Attention magnetism. Attention is the currency of influence, and those who master it hold the key to shaping decisions, perceptions, and outcomes. Every moment, an overwhelming flood of stimuli competes for people's focus. Notifications, conversations, advertisements, internal thoughts, each one a contender in the relentless battle for cognitive priority. Yet the brain, despite its remarkable complexity, can only truly focus on one thing at a time. This bottleneck creates both a limitation and an opportunity. Whatever captures attention becomes magnified in importance, coloring how people interpret everything that follows. Robert Cialdini illustrates this principle vividly through a marketing experiment in which participants were asked about their happiness with their dating lives immediately after being questioned about the weather. On sunny days, participants reported higher satisfaction. On cloudy days, their responses trended downward. The weather had no logical connection to their dating lives, but because attention was momentarily anchored to their mood, the answer was shaped by it. This reveals a crucial insight. Attention doesn't just passively observe, it actively sculpts perception. You must understand that attention is not neutral. It's inherently biased toward whatever stands out, feels urgent, or aligns with pre-existing mental shortcuts. Consider the classic phenomenon of the cocktail party effect, where, amidst the noise of a crowded room, you can instantly tune into someone saying your name. The brain prioritizes what it perceives as personally relevant. Advertisers have long exploited this with strategies like flashing bright colors, using bold fonts, or placing products at eye level. But attention isn't just about being loud, it's about being precise. The best persuaders don't merely grab attention, they direct it. A magician doesn't rely on chaos to hide the trick. They guide your eyes intentionally to ensure you miss the sleight of hand happening inches away. Every master communicator, whether a keynote speaker, a marketing executive, or a political leader, understands this principle. They don't let attention wander. They shape its path with deliberate care. In thinking, fast and slow. Daniel Kahneman explores how framing exploits this attention principle. The way information is presented determines how it's perceived. For example, saying a medical procedure has a 90% survival rate sounds far more reassuring than stating it has a 10% mortality rate, even though the facts are identical. Attention locks onto the survival percentage in the first frame and the mortality percentage in the second, coloring the emotional response accordingly. This isn't manipulation, it's strategy. It's recognizing that human attention isn't infinite, and where you guide it will determine the mental framework through which decisions are made. History offers another compelling example. Winston Churchill's wartime speeches. Amid chaos and despair, Churchill didn't focus attention on Britain's vulnerabilities. Instead, he emphasized resilience, courage, and eventual victory. His words painted mental images so vivid that they anchored public perception, focusing people on hope rather than fear. Attention wasn't left to scatter across wartime hardships. It was funneled toward unity and resolve. Contrast this with leaders who failed to guide public focus, allowing attention to drift toward panic, uncertainty, and doubt. The lesson is clear. If you don't direct your attention, something or someone else will. In the realm of marketing, Steve Jobs applied this principle masterfully during Apple product launches. When introducing the iPhone, he didn't just list features. He began by declaring it as 3 devices in one: a phone, a music player, and an internet communicator, all seamlessly integrated. Before anyone could get lost in technical specifications, Jobs captured and anchored attention on the revolutionary nature of the product. The details followed, but by then, the audience was already focused on one clear idea: innovation. To apply this lesson in your own life, start with a question. What do I want people to focus on? Whether you're delivering a presentation, leading a team, or crafting a message, identify the single most important point and build everything around it. Use visual cues, repetition, and emotional hooks to anchor attention where you need it. Don't assume your audience will naturally focus on what's important. Make them focus. If you're negotiating, emphasize your strongest point early and return to it frequently. If you're writing an email, ensure your subject line commands immediate attention. Never leave attention to chance, because once focus drifts, persuasion falters. Understand this. You don't just need people to hear you. You need them to see what you want them to see and think about what you want them to think about. Attention isn't a resource, it's a weapon. Wield it with intention. Lesson 2. The power of association. The human brain is an association-making machine. It doesn't just process isolated pieces of information. It links them, categorizes them, and stores them in webs of related concepts, emotions, and memories. This associative network is why a simple smell can transport you back to childhood, why a particular song can flood you with emotion, and why certain words trigger immediate reactions. Associations shape how people interpret messages, experiences, and even decisions. Robert Cialdini demonstrates this with an intriguing study. Participants were shown an image of a cloud-filled sky before being asked for a financial contribution. The clouds subconsciously triggered feelings of calmness and security, making participants more agreeable and less risk-averse. A seemingly irrelevant image had created a powerful mental link that influenced behavior without the participants even realizing it. This principle reveals a crucial truth. If you can control or guide what someone associates with your message, you can control how they perceive it. Associations are not neutral. They carry emotional weight, and they stick. Branding is the most overt example of this principle in action. Coca-Cola has spent billions associating its product with happiness, friendship, and celebration. The drink itself isn't intrinsically tied to these feelings. It's sugar water with bubbles. But decades of careful advertising have forged that connection in billions of minds worldwide. Similarly, luxury brands like Rolex and Mercedes-Benz don't just sell watches or cars. They sell associations with status, excellence, and refinement. These associations aren't random. They are meticulously engineered and reinforced through imagery, messaging, and consistent emotional triggers. In Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, the power of associations is explored through the concept of stickiness. Memorable ideas stick because they are tied to simple yet emotionally charged associations. Think of the anti-drug campaign slogan from the 80s. "This is your brain on drugs," paired with the image of a frying egg. The association is visceral, unforgettable, and incredibly effective. The brain doesn't need a dissertation on substance abuse. It needs a powerful image that locks into its associative web and refuses to let go. You must understand that every message you deliver will trigger associations, whether you intend it to or not. The question is whether those associations serve your purpose or work against it. Consider political campaigns, where slogans and imagery are carefully curated to evoke specific associations. When a politician uses words like freedom, security, or change, they're not just random choices. They're associative triggers tied to deeply embedded values and emotions in the public psyche. The success of these campaigns often hinges not on policies or facts, but on the strength of the associations they create. Similarly, historical propaganda campaigns have wielded this principle with chilling effectiveness, linking enemy groups to threatening symbols or ideas to provoke fear and unity among the masses. Associations bypass logic. They strike at the emotional core and become mental shortcuts for decision-making. In personal relationships, associations operate with equal power. Think about how certain tones of voice, repeated phrases, or shared experiences become tied to emotional responses. A leader who consistently praises their team in public creates an association between themselves and appreciation, while a leader who only appears during crises becomes associated with stress and fear. These patterns aren't accidental. They are the results of repeated exposure and consistent cues. If you want to be seen as someone reliable, competent, or kind, you must actively create moments and messages that reinforce those associations. From a behavioral science perspective, the power of association is rooted in the brain's reliance on heuristics, mental shortcuts that simplify decision-making. In thinking, fast and slow. Daniel Kahneman explains how the brain prefers associative thinking because it's faster and requires less cognitive effort. When someone sees a financial proposal paired with reassuring imagery, their brain doesn't dissect the proposal line by line. It takes the shortcut provided by the association and makes a decision based on that emotional cue. To apply this lesson, you must become intentional about the associations your words, visuals, and actions create. Whether you're pitching an idea, selling a product, or building a reputation, ask yourself, what emotional or conceptual association do I want to anchor in my audience's mind? Then reverse engineer every detail to align with that goal. Use language, imagery, and repetition to reinforce the desired connection. Don't assume people will make the association on their own. Guide them there deliberately. If you want your message to feel warm and inviting, pair it with comforting visuals, friendly tones, and relatable metaphors. If you want it to feel urgent and serious, use bold statements, sharp visuals, and a sense of scarcity. Never forget, associations are not optional. They happen automatically. Your job is to ensure they happen in your favor. Engineer them, reinforce them, and use them as bridges to your audience's perception. When you control the association, you control the narrative. Lesson 3. The importance of timing. Timing isn't just a factor in persuasion. It's the silent architect of success or failure. The precise moment before a key interaction, a critical decision, or a pivotal conversation can amplify or undermine your message entirely. Robert Cialdini drives this point home with the example of job applicants who were significantly more likely to secure a position when they mentioned a key trait, like trustworthiness, before being asked to provide examples. Why does this work? Because the brain doesn't process information in isolation. It interprets every new piece of data in the context of what came immediately before. Recent information shapes expectations, primes interpretations, and frames conclusions. Timing isn't just about delivering a great message, it's about delivering it when your audience is most receptive. Think of timing as the invisible scaffolding of persuasion. It's why stand-up comedians obsess over the beat between a setup and a punchline, why skilled negotiators wait for the precise moment of tension before making a key concession, and why marketers flood your inbox with emails at strategic hours of the day. Timing isn't random, it's calculated, and those who master it gain leverage over every interaction. Malcolm Gladwell explores similar timing dynamics in The Tipping Point, illustrating how small and well-timed actions can cascade into massive social change. He discusses how cultural phenomena like the rise of Sesame Street or the sudden popularity of a particular fashion trend weren't just about quality or messaging, they were about being introduced at precisely the right moment in a broader cultural timeline. To understand timing's power, look at sports. In basketball, a well-timed pass is often the difference between scoring a point and losing possession. In boxing, a punch delivered at the exact moment an opponent drops their guard lands with devastating impact. These principles aren't exclusive to physical competition. They apply just as strongly to human interaction. If you're negotiating a salary increase, the timing of your request matters just as much as your argument. Ask too soon, and you might seem impatient. Ask too late, and you might have missed your leverage. The key is to anticipate the moment when your counterpart is most psychologically open to your message. Science backs this up. In behavioral psychology, the concept of primacy and recency effects demonstrates how people remember the first and last things they hear far more vividly than anything in the middle. If you're delivering a presentation, your opening and closing moments carry disproportionate weight. The timing of these key points will determine whether your audience leaves with clarity or indifference. This principle also applies to personal relationships. Think about heartfelt apologies. An apology offered immediately after a misstep might come across as insincere or reactionary, while one delivered after emotions have cooled can feel thoughtful and genuine. However, wait too long, and the apology might lose its relevance altogether. Historical events also illustrate the magnitude of timing. Consider Winston Churchill's speech following the evacuation of Dunkirk. He didn't wait for public despair to settle. He acted swiftly, framing the retreat not as a defeat, but as a miracle of courage and resilience. Churchill understood that the window for reframing public perception was narrow, and he seized it. On the other hand, history is littered with examples of poorly timed decisions leading to catastrophic results. The failure to act swiftly during critical moments in political or military strategy often turns manageable problems into irreversible crises. In marketing, product launches are another arena where timing dictates success. Apple doesn't just launch products. They unveil them during carefully staged events when anticipation is at its peak. They don't let timing happen to them, they create it. In contrast, even the best products can fail if they're introduced when the market isn't ready, or when competitors have already saturated the audience's attention. Applying this principle requires vigilance. You must constantly ask yourself, when is the audience most open to this idea? If you're pitching an idea to your boss, catch them after a recent success, or when they're in a positive mood. If you're proposing a major change to your team, do it when morale is high, not during a period of fatigue or uncertainty. Even in day-to-day conversations, timing can turn an ordinary moment into a persuasive opportunity. For example, asking someone for a favor after they've just received good news increases the chances of a positive response because their emotional state is more favorable. Timing isn't just about luck, It's about reading the moment, anticipating emotional states, and understanding the sequence of events. You must become a student of human rhythm. Observe when people are most receptive. Notice when tension peaks, and sense when attention begins to wane. Master persuaders don't just think about what to say. They think about when to say it. Every moment carries an invisible weight, and your ability to act or speak at the right one determines your success. Timing isn't everything. It's the only thing. If you miss the window, even the most brilliant argument can fall flat. But if you strike at the perfect moment, even a modest idea can create a lasting impact. Pay attention to the clock, not the one on the wall, but the one ticking inside your audience's mind. Precision is your greatest ally. Lesson 5. The priming effect. Priming operates in the shadows of the mind, subtly shaping behavior, perception, and decision-making without conscious awareness. It works because the subconscious processes information faster and more efficiently than the conscious mind, reacting to cues before you've had time to realize their influence. Robert Cialdini brings this principle to life with an experiment in which participants exposed to words associated with patience exhibited significantly more tolerance in frustrating scenarios. Conversely, participants primed with words tied to impatience grew irritated far more quickly. This isn't magic, it's neuroscience. The brain takes shortcuts wherever possible, using associations triggered by words, images, or sensory stimuli to guide behavior. These shortcuts are not inherently bad. They're an evolutionary advantage, but in the hands of a skilled persuader, they become tools of immense power. The priming effect hinges on the fact that the human brain is highly associative. It doesn't just process information in isolation. It weaves connections between what it sees, hears, and feels, and those connections have consequences. If you expose someone to words like cooperation, helpful, and kindness, you prime them to act in ways that align with those concepts. In contrast, words like selfish, ruthless, and competition trigger defensive and self-serving behaviors. The beauty and danger of priming lies in its subtlety. Most people have no idea they've been primed, yet their behavior reflects the influence. It's why retail stores play certain types of music to encourage slower browsing or faster checkouts, and why restaurants use specific colors in their decor to influence appetite and spending habits. Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein delve deep into priming in Nudge, demonstrating how small, well-placed cues can create significant behavioral shifts. They describe how placing healthier food options at eye level in school cafeterias increases the likelihood of children choosing them, even without any explicit instruction. Similarly, Thaler explores how merely placing an image of eyes above an honesty box increased contributions because people felt subconsciously watched. These aren't grand interventions, they're nudges, made powerful by their ability to bypass conscious resistance. In the world of marketing, priming is practically standard practice. Advertisers know that showing images of happy families, cozy homes, or breathtaking landscapes can create emotional associations that make products more appealing. Luxury brands prime customers with sleek visuals, dim lighting, and aspirational imagery to trigger feelings of exclusivity and status. These tactics don't rely on logic. They rely on subconscious triggers that bypass the critical faculties of the brain. You don't rationally decide that a fragrance will make you more attractive. You feel it because the advertisement primed you to associate it with romance, desire, and allure. Priming doesn't just exist in grand strategies, it operates in everyday conversations and social interactions. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, your boss starts a meeting by mentioning recent team successes and the value of collaboration. In the second, they begin by highlighting failures, and warning of potential consequences. The same objectives might follow in both meetings, but the tone, response, and engagement of the team will differ drastically because of how they were primed. Similarly, the language you use in emails, presentations, or casual chats primes people towards certain moods, expectations, and reactions. Words like exciting, opportunity, or innovative set a different stage than words like problem, failure, or urgent. Priming can also be environmental. A clean, organized office primes productivity and professionalism, while a cluttered space can subconsciously signal chaos and lack of control. This principle extends to personal branding. A well-crafted social media profile, for example, primes others to perceive you in specific ways before they even meet you in person. Every visual, every word, and every cue serves as a prime, either reinforcing your intended message or working against it. The power of priming is also deeply intertwined with first impressions. Research shows that the initial moments of an interaction carry disproportionate weight because they set the cognitive frame through which everything else is interpreted. If someone meets you in an environment that feels warm, positive, and professional, they're primed to view your words and actions through that lens. If they encounter you in a setting that feels chaotic or rushed, the opposite occurs. Consider the classic study where participants were asked to hold either a warm cup of coffee or a cold one before meeting a stranger. Those who held the warm coffee described the stranger as friendlier and more approachable, while those holding the cold coffee perceived them as more distant. Nothing about the stranger changed, only the environmental prime. The lesson here is clear. Context isn't just background noise, it's part of the message. But priming isn't about trickery, it's about awareness. You can't rely on brute force persuasion if the mental stage hasn't been set correctly. If you want someone to act generously, don't just ask for kindness, prime them with stories, images, or cues tied to generosity. If you want a team to embrace change, start with examples of successful transformation rather than opening with fear-based arguments. Applying priming requires precision. Start by asking yourself, what emotional or mental state do I want to trigger before delivering my message? Then, reverse engineer the environment, the language, and the visuals to create that state. Whether it's a meeting room, an email subject line, or a product presentation, everything should serve as a primer. Don't leave these cues to chance. They're too powerful to be ignored. Always remember, people rarely make decisions in a vacuum. Every choice, every reaction, every impression emerges from a subconscious stage set moments earlier. The smallest cue can trigger a cascade of behavioral shifts. Use that knowledge responsibly, deliberately, and strategically. Prime your audience's mind, and you'll find that persuasion doesn't start when you speak. It starts long before that. Lesson 4. Unity Principle. Unity isn't about surface-level similarity. It's about creating an unshakable sense of belonging. When people perceive you as part of their group, their team, or their tribe, they become far more open to your ideas, more forgiving of your flaws, and more likely to support your cause. Robert Cialdini illustrates this with a powerful example. A company significantly increased customer compliance simply by framing their communication with a unifying statement. We're all part of the same team here. That wasn't just clever phrasing, it was psychological alignment. Unity triggers something primal in human psychology. Evolution hardwired humans to survive in groups, and those ancient instincts remain deeply embedded in modern behavior. People seek safety, affirmation, and purpose within their tribes. Whether that tribe is a family, a company, a fan base, or a nation. Unity isn't just about agreeing with someone, It's about identifying with them. This principle isn't limited to physical proximity or shared demographics. It transcends age, gender, race, and background because it operates at the level of shared identity. Consider the bond soldiers form during boot camp. They don't just work together, they become each other's brothers and sisters. It's not about shared tasks, it's about shared purpose, sacrifice, and experience. Similarly, during national crises or major sporting events, you see strangers hugging, crying, and celebrating together because, in those moments, they share an unspoken unity. They're not just individuals anymore, they're part of a larger us. Seth Godin explores this deeply in Tribes, where he emphasizes that people don't just join groups, they join shared stories. A tribe isn't just a collection of people, it's a collection of people aligned by a narrative, a belief, or a goal. Think of Apple customers. They're not just consumers. They're members of a tribe that believes in challenging the status quo and celebrating innovation. When you buy an Apple product, you're not just purchasing technology, you're joining a movement. Unity creates loyalty, and loyalty is a multiplier of influence. This principle also explains the power of insider language, symbols, and rituals. Fraternities, sports teams, and even corporate environments often develop their own jargon, handshakes, or shared jokes. These aren't frivolous details, they're glue. They signal membership, deepen emotional bonds, and create an invisible line between us and them. In George Orwell's 1984, the dystopian regime exploits this principle by enforcing collective rituals like the 2 minutes hate. While extreme, it underscores a truth. Unity can be used for both constructive and destructive ends, and its power lies in its ability to dissolve individuality into a shared purpose. But unity isn't always automatic. It's something you must cultivate deliberately. If you're leading a team, you can't rely on job titles or organizational charts to create unity. Those are technical structures, not emotional connections. Instead, you must foster shared struggles, shared victories, and shared language. Think about the difference between a manager who says, "You all need to meet this deadline," and one who says, "We need to meet this deadline together because our success depends on it." The second statement creates alignment. It dissolves the barrier between leader and team, forming a shared sense of responsibility. Unity also thrives in stories. Great leaders and communicators don't just present facts. They tell stories that align everyone under a common banner. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just give a speech. He painted a vision of shared dreams and shared struggles when he said, "I have a dream." He didn't just speak about himself, he invited everyone to step into that dream with him. Effective storytellers build unity by making listeners feel they are part of something larger than themselves. In the digital age, online communities exemplify how powerful unity can be, even when physical connection is absent. Reddit groups, fandoms, and activist movements form tight-knit, fiercely loyal tribes around shared interests, causes, or beliefs. When people believe they're part of a collective we, their willingness to act, contribute, and advocate skyrockets. This principle also explains the success of crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter. Projects don't succeed because of their technical specifications. They succeed because they build a narrative that makes backers feel like they're part of something important. Unity can also backfire if you misuse it. Creating an artificial sense of connection without sincerity is manipulation. Tenants, and people have an innate ability to detect inauthenticity. Forced unity, when exposed, destroys trust faster than almost any other failure. That's why unity must be real, consistent, and reinforced through actions, not just words. It's not enough to say, "We're in this together." You must demonstrate it repeatedly through fairness, transparency, and mutual respect. To apply the unity principle effectively, start by identifying what shared identity or story aligns you with your audience. Are you part of the same team, chasing the same dream, or overcoming the same challenge? Then, make that unity explicit. Use inclusive language, say we instead of you. Share personal stories that highlight common experiences. Find symbols, rituals, or repeated phrases that reinforce your connection. When you face challenges, don't delegate blame, share responsibility. When you celebrate victories, make them collective. Never underestimate the magnetic pull of unity. When people see you as part of their us, the walls of skepticism crumble. The barriers to persuasion weaken, and the willingness to cooperate multiplies. Don't settle for being agreeable. Become one of them. Influence doesn't flow from authority. It flows from shared identity. Build it, nurture it, and protect it. Because once unity is established, your words won't just be heard, they'll be embraced. Lesson 7. Emotional leverage. Emotion is the master key to human behavior. It overrides logic, trumps reason, and drives decisions with a force that facts alone can never match. Robert Cialdini underscores this with an unsettling example. Fear-based health campaigns only succeed when paired with a clear, actionable path forward. When people are confronted with fear but offered no way out, they freeze, shut down, or retreat. The emotional trigger exists, but without direction, it becomes paralyzing instead of motivating. This reveals a profound truth. Emotion is only effective when it has somewhere to go. Fear without hope creates paralysis. Pride without purpose breeds arrogance, and urgency without clarity results in panic. To use emotional leverage effectively, you must pair powerful emotional triggers with a clear direction for action. Human behavior is not governed by spreadsheets or data points. It's governed by feelings. Consider the way successful political campaigns rely on emotional appeals. They don't win hearts with statistics. They win them with stories, imagery, and language that stirs something deep inside the voter. Think of Barack Obama's 2008 campaign slogan, "Yes, we can." It wasn't an argument. It was an emotional rallying cry. People didn't analyze it. They felt it. Similarly, in Simon Sinek's Start With Why, he explores how the world's most influential leaders and brands don't begin with what they do, but why they do it. Apple doesn't sell computers. It sells innovation, creativity, and a rebellion against the status quo. Tesla doesn't sell cars. It sells a sustainable future wrapped in cutting-edge technology. Both brands succeed because they speak to the emotional core of their audience before they ever mention technical specifications or price points. Emotional leverage isn't manipulation. It's understanding. It's recognizing that behind every decision lies an emotional driver. Fear motivates people to protect what they love. Pride pushes them to strive for excellence. Urgency drives them to act before opportunities vanish. And love, whether it's love for family, ideals, or dreams, has moved mountains throughout human history. Look at charity campaigns. The most effective ones don't overwhelm you with global statistics on poverty. They show you the face of one child, tell you their story, and invite you to feel their struggle. Statistics are forgettable. Stories are unforgettable. Emotion is also the invisible force behind loyalty. People don't return to their favorite cafe because the coffee is slightly better. They return because it feels like home. Customers don't stick with a brand because of its product manual. They stay because of how the brand makes them feel about themselves. Coca-Cola has built its empire not on carbonated sugar water, but on feelings of happiness, sharing, and nostalgia. Nike doesn't sell shoes, it sells victory. resilience, and the spirit of competition. These emotional anchors are not accidental. They are cultivated, reinforced, and embedded into every interaction customers have with these brands. In storytelling, emotional leverage is everything. Take Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg didn't just present the atrocities of the Holocaust as historical facts. He focused on individual stories, small moments of hope, and deep human connections. Those emotional moments create an unforgettable impact. You can know the facts about genocide, but you feel the weight of it through the emotional lens of those stories. That's the difference between knowledge and action. Emotion bridges the gap. But leveraging emotion isn't about simply pressing the most obvious buttons. It's about precision. You must understand your audience's emotional landscape before you attempt to influence it. Are they driven by fear or hope? Are they motivated by pride or duty? Are they moved by stories of triumph or tales of caution? Once you identify the dominant emotional thread, your job is to pull on it, not recklessly, but with care and purpose. Take public health campaigns as another example. Anti-smoking advertisements showing damaged lungs and hospital scenes rely on fear to discourage smoking. But without actionable steps, like clear hotlines, support groups, or smoking cessation tools, fear often devolves into denial or avoidance. Contrast that with campaigns that pair fear with a hopeful narrative of recovery and clear steps to get there. Those succeed because they provide an emotional off-ramp, a way to channel fear into productive action. Emotion also thrives in moments of vulnerability. When people feel seen, understood, or valued, they become emotionally invested in what you're saying. A leader who acknowledges team struggles and pairs that acknowledgement with a vision for overcoming them creates emotional resonance. On the other hand, a leader who relies solely on performance metrics and cold logic fails to stir the hearts of their team, no matter how rational their argument might be. Your ability to leverage emotion also depends on your authenticity. Emotional appeals fall flat when they feel contrived or insincere. People can smell manufactured sentiment from miles away. If you're trying to evoke emotion, it must be grounded in truth and delivered with genuine conviction. A half-hearted emotional appeal is worse than none at all because it breeds mistrust. So how do you apply emotional leverage effectively? Start by identifying the core emotional driver behind your audience's behavior. Is it hope, fear, pride, love, or urgency? Once identified, amplify it through your language, your imagery, and your storytelling. Pair that emotion with a clear path forward, a call to action that feels not only logical but inevitable. Don't just appeal to the mind, appeal to the heart first, and let the mind follow. Facts inform, but emotions compel. Data might convince someone of your point, but emotion drives them to act. Logic might earn their agreement, but emotion earns their loyalty. Don't rely on statistics to do the heavy lifting. Let emotion lead the way. And let logic clean up the details. Emotion is the fuel. Logic is the steering wheel. Both are essential, but one must come first. Never forget, every persuasive message lives or dies on whether it makes someone feel something. Facts fade, but feelings linger. If you want to move people, don't start with what you want them to do. Start with how you want them to feel. Emotion isn't just part of persuasion. It's the foundation. Lesson 6. Anchoring the mind. Anchoring is one of the most potent tools in the art of persuasion because it shapes the mental frame through which every subsequent piece of information is processed. The first piece of information someone encounters isn't just a starting point. It's a benchmark, a reference that distorts everything that follows. Robert Cialdini illustrates this principle vividly through pricing strategies. When a customer sees a high initial price, the brain sets that number as a reference point. A subsequent discount then feels like a generous deal, even if the final price aligns with market value. The initial anchor becomes the standard by which all future evaluations are judged. The same dynamic plays out in negotiations, presentations, and everyday decision-making. If you establish the first frame, you control the perception of everything that comes next. Dan Ariely explores this concept deeply in Predictably Irrational. In one experiment, participants were asked to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number and then bid on items in an auction. Incredibly, those with higher ending numbers consistently bid more money, even though their numbers had absolutely no relevance to the value of the items. The mere act of being exposed to a higher number anchored their expectations upward. This example highlights the automatic and unconscious nature of anchoring. The human mind doesn't operate in a vacuum. It latches onto reference points, even irrelevant ones, and uses them to evaluate all subsequent information. Anchoring isn't confined to numbers or pricing. It works with ideas, emotions, and perceptions. Imagine you're presenting a new initiative to your team. If you begin with the statement, "This project will require significant time and effort," you've anchored their perception of the initiative as burdensome and costly. But if you start with, "This project has the potential to revolutionize how we operate," you've anchored their focus on opportunity and innovation. Both statements might be true, but the anchor you choose dictates the emotional and cognitive response that follows. This principle also explains why first impressions are disproportionately influential. The first words you say, the first image someone sees, or the first idea introduced sets the stage for everything that follows. In the legal world, attorneys use anchoring in opening statements. If a defense lawyer begins with an emotional story about their client's humanity before the prosecution presents damning evidence, the jury processes those facts through the lens of compassion. Conversely, if the prosecution anchors the jury with a narrative of guilt, every subsequent argument is filtered through that presumption. Real estate agents master anchoring in property tours. They often start by showing a home that's deliberately overpriced or in poor condition. Afterward, the next property, regardless of its true value, seems far more appealing because the anchor was set low. Similarly, in salary negotiations, the party that sets the first number holds significant power. If you're negotiating your salary, presenting a high but justifiable figure creates an upward anchor. The conversation then revolves around adjusting downward, rather than starting low and trying to climb uphill. Anchoring is also deeply tied to storytelling. In Christopher Nolan's Inception, the concept of planting an idea in someone's mind mirrors anchoring. The protagonist doesn't just tell his target what to think, he introduces a foundational idea so that every subsequent thought grows out of that seed. Anchoring works the same way. The first idea plants itself firmly, and everything afterward grows in its shadow. In marketing, this principle is omnipresent. When you see a price slashed from $299 to $149, your brain doesn't evaluate $149 objectively. It evaluates it in comparison to $299. Retailers don't just list prices, they design them with anchoring in mind. Subscription services often display their most expensive option first, not because they expect customers to choose it, but because it makes the next option feel like a better deal. Anchoring also applies to how people interpret statistics and data. If you tell someone that 90% of patients recover fully from this procedure, they'll feel reassured. But if you frame it as 10% of patients face complications, their focus shifts to risk and uncertainty. The numbers are the same, but the anchor frames the perception. To apply anchoring effectively, you must take control of the starting point. Don't let your audience set their own reference frame. Set it for them. If you're presenting a budget, start with the largest, most ambitious element. If you're negotiating a deadline, begin with a timeline that gives you sufficient flexibility. If you're pitching a product, highlight its most impressive feature first, not its most practical one. The brain pays disproportionate attention to the first impression, so make it count. But anchoring isn't just about presenting the first idea, it's about reinforcing it. Once you set the anchor, everything you say afterward must tie back to it. If your anchor was about opportunity, every supporting point must reinforce that sense of potential. If your anchor was about urgency, every subsequent argument must point back to why immediate action is essential. The danger of anchoring lies in its permanence. Once set, an anchor is incredibly difficult to dislodge. If someone anchors your idea in negativity, you'll spend far more effort trying to undo that perception than if you had set the anchor yourself. This is why it's critical to be the first voice, the first number, or the first image in any persuasive interaction. Your strategy should always involve setting the mental stage early and setting it deliberately. Ask yourself, what is the first impression I want to create? What is the mental benchmark I want my audience to use when evaluating everything else? Then, deliver that anchor with clarity and confidence. Whether you're negotiating a deal, leading a team, or influencing a friend, the first idea holds disproportionate weight. Take control of it, anchor the mind, and the rest will follow. Conclusion. Pre-Suasion teaches you that the battle for influence begins long before you state your case. Attention must be guided deliberately, associations crafted purposefully, timing chosen strategically, and emotions leveraged decisively. Every interaction, every word, and every environmental cue contributes to the outcome. If you master Pre-Suasion, you'll find your persuasive efforts landing far more effectively. For deeper exploration, books like Influence by Cialdini himself and Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman offer complementary insights into human behavior. Remember, every moment leading up to persuasion is a moment of power. Don't waste it. Influence starts before you even open your mouth. The end